Before we get started, I just wanted to say that I hope everyone had a great holiday and you'll all have a happy new year. I have a feeling today's conversation is going to scare away some of you or make you think that this is the direction we're going, but no. I just need to get my voice out there and get my feelings done and over with on this topic. Forgive me this one-off opportunity to vent some frustration, but also present some of my feelings on what we can do to fix some of the issues we have with Destiny 2's Eververse, or even shed some light on what really bugs me about loot boxes and their ilk as a whole. I say some, like there's only a few problems, but we all know better. Many have already jumped into the financial side of the argument about loot boxes and anything related to them. That's not what I really intend to cover here. I could go into how many people at $70,000 salaries would be allowed to be paid with the money that is afforded from our payment of over 2 million copies of the game, most of which apparently were digital, but with no clear figures, with no real clear idea of how much was actually fully sold, we can't really dip too far into this conversation, and it tends to become guesswork at best on what is actually profited by a game today. No, we need to look at Eververse from a base idea and how it simply doesn't work. It doesn't drive me to do anything at all as a player to continue to play the game, regardless of what is locked behind this system. The simply forceful nature of locking so much behind this system and having drop rates be skewed by this system makes it hard for me to want to come back. Let me explain what I mean. At its base, Eververse is in the game to produce another layer for us to invest into. And I don't mean our wallets, at least initially, but it's there for us to invest into our characters for different armor looks, sparrows, shaders, ships, etc. From the ideas of Destiny 1, this is a very different type of Eververse, where before we'd gain a lot of these rewards from a code or in-game events, especially SRL. God, I miss raced and sparrows around. We'd also get them from drops inside of the hard mode difficulty of the raids, with a chance at some of them from Vanguard strikes, either heroic or not. There were plenty of tiers to chase after in Destiny 1, and perhaps at its basest, this is where Destiny 2's Eververse simply falls flat. There are things to chase, but they are put behind a system that just deifies the microtransaction instead of hard-earned achievement or grind. I think you can already see where we're going with today's ideas, but let's keep going with it all the same. Back at the start of Destiny, Tess Eververse was someone that was in the tower as a reclaimer. She was there to give us back a lot of our promotional equipment in the tower, like pre-order bonuses and other code stuff and the like. This was before she was closed down and given a new purpose, the acquisition of silver and a production of items that seems to be ripped straight from YouTube's past, with emotes inspired by dances and other memes, sparrows, ships, armor. Well, this isn't sounding much different from what we have in Destiny 2, so what changed? What is it that makes Tess so different now where she was in Destiny 1? Well, for starters, the system of loot was different back in Destiny 1. When you go to a planet-side vendor, you're given the option to view their loot. This allows you to not only see the armor that they have, but also to see what else they can possibly drop. And a lot of times this is just whittled into weapons and armor. Really isn't much else. There's no ornaments when you get to the planet-side vendors, there's no chips, no sparrows. You do get some shaders that really I don't know a lot of them that are used, and I can only recall a few of them that my friends and others have used, even fairly sparingly or significantly. But even then, on the value of the items that are within these engrams, it's more how they can be appropriated that really works down the mind of the player. When you compare this to Destiny 1, however, you were basically given the ability to constantly grind either a tower faction or the Vanguard or Crucible at the same time that you were doing something else. And meanwhile, you can earn other materials to then turn into Banshee or anybody else to get other equipment or materials for yourself later down the line, or reputation gains. There was so much more that you actually got in Destiny 1. And that's almost kind of a shame for me to say when it comes to the engram system we have today. But let's go back to Tess in the tower, or the farm if you haven't gotten that far, I suppose. Here we are able to see the depth of her loot that her engrams give us, seemingly a lot more behind this system than I would have expected. Chips, sparrows, armor, weapon mods, weapon ornaments, shaders, emotes. Some of these are pretty normal to see behind the system as we discussed before, but then we have ghost shells. Ghost shells are perhaps the toughest one for me to agree with Bungie on to be behind this system, where I don't think they should be here at all. Ghost shells offer a different level of help than we had before from previous ghost shells, where now we're able to track both planetary resources and loot crates. Well, this adds a layer of speed for those that acquire a shell for each planet, even if you have Cade's map from the tower for a way to see the loot chests around the planetary systems. All this does is take out the need for using an item. That and, saving more glimmer to use towards another chance to roll something else at Banshee. I mean, the chances add up just as much as the chances at Tess and other engrams do the same. This, in turn, allows you to get more weapon mod possibilities from him and cut down on your need for Tess in certain circumstances, but it also allows you to have more glimmer, period. And glimmer is far from a resource that's hard to get, mind you, and I won't argue that at all, but it doesn't help this case at all that ghost shells being behind the system is a good thing. Added, if you're looking to get more gunsmith parts, having the right shells for void, solar, or arc weapon kills adds on more ways to get those with the right shells. Yeah, I can't stand behind Bungie on this decision, especially when we had them in Destiny 1 from our faction vendors. And I don't mean just Future Warcult or Crucible or anything, we had it with all of them. If anyone has any right to complain about any part of Eververse, it's the ghost shells. Well, and the collectors, lore lovers, and completionists. We're only just at the start of the problem. Let's change gears for another side of the conversation. Eververse is related so often to a free-to-play system that I think it's worth looking into that theory a little bit more. This is Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, a title that I myself play. I've invested a fair amount of time and, if I'm at all honest, money into the game, and I can certainly say that I feel it fun to keep playing. I've been playing it for over a year, sometimes off and on, but to me it's one of the best examples of a free-to-play title. At least so far as the design, drive to keep me playing, and work that goes into both characters, bosses, story, and so on. It feels like traditional Final Fantasy, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how it suffers from the classic free-to-play woes that you'd expect of many games. When you go to the shop, you're greeted with a lot of options. You can buy some of the in-game currency, of course. You can refill your energy, arena, or other event energy, gain more slots to store up more units or equipment. Of course, the list goes on. If you go to the Summons tab, you're ever greeted with the banners, as they're often called in the market, that cost a lot of your real-life dough or limited time currency. And then you can see the free market stuff, the stuff you just earn in-game, oftentimes without having to spend a dime. You have a chance to pull the units listed in a banner, which then translates to you wanting to possibly keep pulling for ones you really wanted. I can tell you, I myself was after Cloud pretty hard, and I did get him. I'm not proud of what I did, but I did get him. I'll just call it my Christmas gift to myself and move on. The issue with games like these, however, is they may not be around for a long period of time, and they could close up shop tomorrow for all we know. Generally speaking, I don't see that happening with either of the games in question, but I think it worth pointing out that these titles, when their servers are taken down, means we won't be able to play them again. That's sad to think about in a way, and makes this entire conversation even more trivial from a monetary gain standpoint. It's a temporary influx. It's a temporary system. It's a temporary way to gain funds, and it's a temporary game that won't be with us, and may not be with us for the rest of our lives. But darn, does that idea drive the thought home to build a character, a legend, all your own. All the while, you see this banner and its date for myself and many others going, well, for the better chance at Cloud, I better act now. Then, I return to Eververse, and I see the same exact thing, the same concept surrounding it of having a chance at certain items, especially on these exotic ghosts, ships, sparrows, whatever item you might be after. All the while, you can just as easily gain something you don't want. A shader not in the pool, a ship not in the pool, a piece of armor not listed for the day or for the week. You can see where this is going. Added, I find it funny that even if it's not discussed as one, the Dawning could be listed as one of these banners, as an event to market the limited time items presented from the event. Don't get me started on the literal banners listed in the engram spot either from tests. Just keep pushing that lingo without calling it what it is, Bungie. To be fair, this isn't new, but the way it's presented in Destiny 2 makes the comparison hard for me to avoid. Okay, but this system can't be nearly as insidious as I'm making it out to be, can it? It's not so much blown up to make it seem like the items aren't attainable in the game at all, right? Well, you're not wrong, I suppose, but the chance of these items versus some of the other weapons and armor inside the other vendors, just... Tell me how many origin stories you've gotten as you've played the game, or perhaps other weapons or pieces of armor that continue to plague you, and tell me that the loot drop system is varied enough to warrant your thoughts of wanting to keep driving for another engram. It's just weapons and armor with no other rare loot to keep striving for, and that could be one of the largest things that makes Eververse stand out even more. After the recent EXP debacle, which still leaves a sour taste in my mouth, it's a constant reminder to myself that they can't change a system without changing another, altering the EXP gain system, but then increasing the EXP needed for another test box, all the while driving home that the gains need to be balanced for the sake of... temptation, perhaps? Nothing is obviously said about why this system can't just be for fun, where the ideas of, well, if you put a lot of time into it, you'll gain a lot and we thank you for being loyal players. No, instead we get a system that still causes you to need to push forward more and more for the next box, where one of these boxes took me about 2 hours to earn, unrested EXP for the week, while without a Fireteam EXP boost token. This was mainly done with patrols and public events, something I do quite often while just scouring the worlds for new lore or elements I may have missed. I know that not every event gives equal amounts of EXP or otherwise, but if you get a strike team and something slows down a little bit, it's really no different. No, I'm left feeling like the Bright Engram system is there to tempt those that really care about the game, not the ones that are just around from time to time, not the ones that supposedly need to value their time or live busy lives. I just can't see it as a beneficial system, especially when legendary and exotic engrams drop as often as they do with unvarying loot. Then again, this only leads me down another thought process, one that really does confound me in how this practice is allowed to continue in its current state: drop rates and chances. Let's return to Final Fantasy for a second. Here we have 3 crystal types that really matter: blue, yellow, and rainbow. Really, the one you want to have for those truly rare and oftentimes impressive out-of-the-box units are the rainbow ones. Of course they are. They're the most rare. They're the ones you get shown first thing on a new banner, shown how powerful they are and why you really need them. Of course, one thing I've never been told by these banners is what the actual drop rates for these units are, what my rate of a blue, yellow, or rainbow really is. It's something that gets hidden behind terms like triple rate up or experience better drops in this time for X and Y. I, personally, do not know of a lot of games that disclose their rate drops of unit types or, realistically, anything to the masses at all. At least outside of Japan, oftentimes. Final Fantasy, and really many mobile games, have 2 versions, a Japanese version and a global version. What you'll find is that in Japan, the ideas of virtual currency and in-game gambling are a legitimized practice. They make it a point to tell developers to disclose the rates at which you gain items, units or otherwise, from chance drops or summons. If it requires real-world cash in any way, shape, or form, Japan makes it a point to have the rates be called out for informed buying decisions, or at least so the concept goes. This is not done in the global version of these games, where rates are not disclosed at all, instead getting cryptic language that reads triple rate up, instead of, say, from 1 to 3%, as was the case with Brave Exvius not long ago on its rainbow rates in the Japanese version. Japan set a full stop on possible manipulation of these games and can even launch a check for how these systems are being delivered to the consumer. Well, what is the hope behind disclosure? The hope is, as stated before, to make you aware what the drop on an item really is, while also making it an informed decision of what you're buying. It also allows you the idea that everything is equal along all of these random drops for every single account, or it could be that your account may be altered based on how many or what type of pull you might do. Let me explain this in a different way. If little Jimmy is able to start up a new game and his first Eververse package he pulls is an exotic ship, one that you've been trying to get for a very long time, you might be happy for little Jimmy, but you might also be jealous and try to pull for the thing yourself, blowing a lot of cash on more bright engrams. But that's not where the point leads. You've pulled a ton of stuff. And you're starting the game, you pulled a few exotics. You pulled enough to feel like the system was pretty fair and pretty open. After a while, however, you kept playing and playing, only to not see an exotic for a long time. Well, is this because you're just unlucky? Or is there a computer program that changes out your rates, lowering them as you play, turning in loot boxes as you go along, gaining EXP and increasing your ranking? No different from how it is in Final Fantasy. Here, we see a rank-up system, limited pulls, and possibly a change in the rainbow rates from account to account, where those starting get a possibly higher chance to acquire units. Of course, this is all speculation because we simply aren't told, something that the gaming industry is very, very good at not telling us. Transparency is seemingly lost to those interested in how the business works, and I'm led to believe and feel my thoughts have merit thanks to the hidden nature of these systems. The idea of me seeing new accounts being able to acquire 5 or 6 very rare units from their pulls, their starting pulls, while many veteran accounts have to invest into the game to pull certain characters they want, is just as much luck of the draw as it is, well, the possibility to pull rates down on accounts that have simply put a lot of time into the game or show that they are willing to invest. So why not push the player a little further with their wallets to get more out of them? I know this point is a bit drawn out, but it's just to show that without clearly explained rates, we really don't know what kind of situation items from Eververse are in. We just know there's an exotic, legendary, and rare format that comes from all of our loot boxes, all of our engrams, from the gunsmith to the cryptarch, to Cade and Ikora, all the way back to Tess. The limited nature of the typical engram shows how unvaried a lot of what you get is, while Eververse just has pages full of items. Rewards are also far from static, with different loot producing from these boxes, with bright dust not being a guaranteed drop, with random amounts being given to you per bright engram, if it even gives it to you at all. In fact, that's seemingly worse from Final Fantasy, where at least I know if I am to turn in quests or other items, I'm guaranteed to get some of the paid currency in return, or if I spend real cash, I know the exact amount of currency I'm afforded for my purchase. I suppose how fair Eververse is can be argued until Oryx comes back from wherever he is, but in the end it comes down to what kind of system Eververse is being built up to be. Is it a system that encourages further progression of my character via collectible? No. I don't even have a collectible station for anything within Eververse, minus the emotes and ornaments for exotic weapons, if we do care to count that. Meanwhile, sparrows, ships, shaders, and even ghost shells are more valued as currency to be broken down for another type of item to be sauntered off to Tess in exchange for giving up on a collection, of building up a concept seemingly lost to us from Destiny 1, to become legend. The idea of become legend has slowly faded away at that. Interesting how that tagline seems to have been left in the bright dust over the course of the last several months. I'm not driven to do anything with Eververse minus bash it into the ground. I am not driven to care to give the Bungie or Activision overlords any more of my money, with the near promise of rewards that are less valuable to me than those in a free-to-play game celebrated by far fewer people. Destiny 2 is a major chance to make something bigger, even bigger. It's what Destiny 1 felt like, and now how Destiny 2's Eververse continues to sully the name of. I mean, Final Fantasy doesn't have an entry fee of $60 with $40 of initial DLC to boot, plus more of that on the way, I'm sure. At the end of the day, I would love to see this system be given a purpose minus what's already been taken from us in Destiny, where all the items I'm accustomed to receiving are stuffed behind this system. Personally, I felt the first game had a much better implementation of the system, where it wasn't too in-your-face, but still limited in terms of how you can acquire these boxes. You also didn't need to go to tests each time to open them, instead just needing to unlock them from your inventory. Go figure that. Can't tell me they don't do that now with a purpose, but feel free to argue that one all you want. In the end, the random nature of Eververse needs to change somehow. The ideas of allowing me to work with ships, sparrow shaders, ghost shells, and other such items should be something that keeps bringing me back. The ideas of bounties for EXP and level gains need to come back. The ideas of working together for a common goal needs to come back. The ideas of Destiny 1 need to return to drive us into a way to feel like our time is valued once again. Masterworks is a good first step, but then seeing these new items added in the Dawning just after release of Curse of Osiris doesn't fill me with a lot of hope, especially when the system is so sparingly giving you engrams as it is for the event. And I'm not saying we need to bring back everything for Destiny 1 just to kind of put a cap on that right now, but Destiny 1 clearly had some good ideas that just didn't follow through. In short, how can we fix Eververse? Well, let me unlock the engrams at any cryptarch for one, since the idea of always seeing those bright engrams next to tests is a temptation regardless of what you personally may say of the system. I can attest that it is. Every single time. Take ghost shells out of it. Stop that immediately. Add it into limited time events if you want to, like faction rallies, Iron Banner, so on. You know what? Stop making the factions limited time and add their loot pool back into the game constantly as well, with a weekly revolving inventory just like it was in Destiny 1. That was so much more fun to look forward to. Just make ghosts everywhere at least. Give quests for sparrows and ships, exotic ones or legendary ones. Ghosts too. Give other ways to craft or collect these items. You had book tracking before. Add that back in again. That was fun before as well. Let me build on a character again, instead of feeling like I need to break down Bright Dust for the sake of hoping next week the item I want will be available for purchase using it. Just none of it makes sense. None of it. Well, it does if you're going to be greedy and just feed on your customers' wallets, then it makes total sense to limit the items we receive in a large pool of loot. Added, if you're going to have any kind of microtransaction, can we just go back to the old-time model? Buying a costume for $10 or something like that? At least I knew what I was getting instead of your random bullcrap. I guess the appeal of random rewards really is that incredible for some people, as it obviously has been for the last season, really the last year of games being released. It feels like Tess needs to close up shop again, if not for good, then at least until she gets her itemization figured out, where she serves a point that isn't just to the shareholder. I know you won't do this, Bungie, because you're afraid to see people stop investing into the game like what happened with Battlefront 2 this past November, but I can hope you'd put a good faith move like that, even temporarily, to help set the loot tables in a better place. This system is far better than the one in Battlefront 2, as some are very quick to compare it to, but it certainly borders on one that needs to calm down, needs to stop testing our boundaries so much, and needs to begin respecting us as customers and players instead of another wallet. Build fun before you build funds. That just comes from natural play of the game. And yes, I know Chris Barrett of the live team is showing how it's done over on Twitter with all of this being said, and I can't wait to see what's in store for next year with the extra inclusion of items. Just don't make them limited time. A constant push to something else is what's needed to be present. That's what keeps people coming back. If nothing does change with the system, then a cap needs to be placed on it to stop you from buying non-stop amounts of silver, or a means to opt out entirely. Nintendo actually does this in their free-to-play games, like the new Animal Crossing, for instance. I may just get into the habit of breaking down my bright engrams and avoid the system altogether. Not in protest, just I don't want to even think about it anymore. All of this goes in direct contrast to the lore behind the store, where these engrams and items were brought about by Fenchurch Eververse, the original owner of the store, digging up Golden Age technologies and then bringing them to us, where silver is seemingly a Golden Age engram-like technology to unlock these items. Sadly, looking into the lore of Eververse makes little to no sense, as Bungie and Activision have definitely thrown out anything related to it, putting New Age Osirian gear and equipment behind this system. If you guys wanted to know the lore behind Eververse, that about covers it in short form. Well, if I end up talking about anyone, it might be Fenchurch, because anyone that calls the speaker out is okay in my book. In the end, it's a business. Just don't be so scummy about how you want to carry that business out. Be the escape that people want to have from an otherwise questionable world. You have a long road ahead of you if you want to make up for that. Make some New Year's resolutions and start chipping away at them. I have hope, otherwise I wouldn't be here voicing my concerns so loudly. I've seen what this game has done to bring people together. Don't be the reason that they split apart. I'll leave my rather lengthy thoughts there. Again, we won't speak on the monetary ideas of Eververse, as I feel others have done a very good job poking their hands in the cookie jar enough. I hope to see you all in the new year, and I hope to see Bungie Activision change up their ways, but fast within it as well, focusing on a fun experience before focusing on Eververse as their driving force. Clearly, it's not working and is only serving to push people against you more than help your business and reputation.